Welcome back to the Hill Update. I'm your host, Dean Allison, and joining me on the show today is an MP from New Brunswick, Richard Bragdon. Richard was elected in 2019 in the riding of Tobique-Mactaquac, located in the western part of the province. Richard, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here, Dean. Thank you for the opportunity.
So we just came back from a break week, so I'm guessing busy week as usual in your constituency. What exactly are you hearing in the riding in terms of major issues these days?
Well, first and foremost, Dean, above and beyond everything else is the cost of living, the soaring cost of living, and the ability for people to keep up. And then with the onset of another winter coming, obviously, especially those on fixed incomes, I think of our seniors throughout Atlantic Canada and in Western New Brunswick. They're looking at soaring heating costs, fuel costs, the cost of groceries. And so every time they fill up their car, every time they go to get groceries, it's top of mind, and they're feeling it and they're thinking, I don't know if I've got enough left over at the end of a month by the time the end of the month comes to make sure all the bills are paid and put fuel in my car and keep the house heated. So it's a lot of pressure on all the people, including those with families, others who are on a single income for the household. It's a real challenge overall for everyone right now. Cost of living is affecting people throughout our region.
So, Richard, we have a video from the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, and I'm going to play that right now as he talks about some of the things you just mentioned.
The honorable leader of the opposition.
Middle-class shipyard worker paying $7,500 a month on his mortgage is living austerity now. Yes. The Prime Minister is talking about is abundance for government and austerity for working class people who must carry him and his overpriced bureaucracy around on their backs. Mr. Speaker, this gentleman has 3 kids to raise in their adolescence, paying for their sports while keeping a roof overhead. How does he expect them to pay $7,500 a month to fund his overpriced interest rates that result from his deficits?
Le très honorable Premier ministre.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is proposing to cut spending. Well, the reality is we have the lowest deficit in the G7. We have the best debt to GDP ratio in the G7. And we've preserved our AAA credit rating, Mr. Speaker. We are fiscally responsible as we support people with things like the grocery rebate, with investments that are bringing down inflation, working with the different grocery companies. But the reality is Canadians have a right to know which programs he'd be cutting. Would he be cutting child care for families? Would he be cutting dental care for kids? Would he be cutting pensions for seniors? Because, Mr. Speaker, he has campaigned against all 3 of those measures for Canadians. That's right. Here.
So, Richard, you talked about those on fixed incomes and our seniors, but what we hear there from us, Mr. Poilievre, is that it's also the middle class that are being affected. Are you hearing some of that as well?
Absolutely, Dean, hearing it from families that are trying to make mortgage payments. And we know across the country that mortgage rates have doubled over the last 8 years. We've seen that rents have doubled over the last 8 years. You can't take that much more out of your income on a monthly basis and expect people to be able to keep up. Wages can't keep up with that kind of growth in rent and mortgage rates. So everyone's feeling it, and it's costing families a huge amount of money, and they're feeling the pressure. I see it on the furrow brows of our farmers. The input costs have been soaring. So, people look at groceries. It's not the farmer's fault. It's all the input cost and the cost of their production and the labor shortages and labor costs and the challenges and the cost of transporting those goods to market and to the stores. It's all gone up exponentially. And so that's affecting everyday Canadians, everyone who has to purchase goods in order to survive, which is all of us. It's affecting, but especially those working class families and those on fixed incomes, absolutely. And we've got to change course.
So I know that you started to talk there, but I guess what people don't always realize is the carbon tax is pretty much affected at every level, and you just started talking about that. So it's multiple, it's compounded on top of compound, basically.
Absolutely, because, for example, if you tax the farmer who grows the food, and this is a line that our leader uses often, but it's so true, and you tax the trucker who trucks and transports the food and goods to the market, you, in effect, tax you tax every Canadian who purchases the food or gets the goods at the store. It has a compounding effect. And then there's layers on that. You have the tax on the tax, and you have HST and GST sometimes piled on top of the carbon taxes and excise taxes. So all of a sudden you've got this tax upon tax upon tax, and Canadians are paying more and more and more. There's not enough left. At the end of the month, they've got far more bills than they have paycheck.
Okay,
It just doesn't add up.
we're going to come back and right after break.